Hello, everyone. This is Dory Clark with Newsweek's Better, and we are here with Heath Clayton. He is the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Chase brand of JP Morgan Chase, and we're going to be talking with him today about efforts to advance diversity and inclusion. Heath, I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for the invite, Dory. It's good to be here.
Wonderful to have you. And Heath is an old friend of mine. And so we have a lot to talk about. But Heath, the first question I have for you is something that we haven't actually talked about very much directly. And so I'm actually curious to know, you are Native American. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion issues, in general, in the cultural conversation, it's about a lot of things, but Native American issues I feel like often get overlooked. Can you talk a little bit more about that and your role as a Native American who's serving in this DEI role?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's often overlooked. I think there's a couple of challenges. I think oftentimes the struggle is just inclusion. When people think of races and ethnicities, when they think about listing them or talking about diverse communities, they often just forget to acknowledge that Indigenous people exist. The second challenge is stereotypes, everything from the Jeep Cherokee to some unfortunate and downright racist sports mascots and sports names. People have ideas in their head about what American Indians, Native Americans, and Indigenous people are. So, as a Native American in the corporate world, I try to elevate my voice, elevate the voices of other Native Americans so that people are reminded that we exist, that we're still here, and that our culture lives on. There's still people in our country and around the world that speak their Indigenous languages and grow up on their ancestral lands and still live out and practice their culture.
That's great. So, if you were talking to leaders who are watching this, who are on board with that, they say, yes, we definitely want to be more inclusive of Native Americans. What are a few things, or even just one thing that a regular company could do to be more mindful of this and to make Native American employees feel more welcome?
Yeah, well, a lot of companies have really paved the way with some awesome efforts. I'm really impressed by what AT&T has done, creating a forum and a community for their Indigenous employees around the world to celebrate their heritage, to be represented in the products that they offer and in all of their corporate initiatives. Nike's really cool. They actually have an Indigenous brand line at the moment, which is part of their long heritage and providing support for the Indigenous communities. Native American Heritage Month is when we really rally, and a good opportunity for every corporate leader to talk about it in town halls and to encourage their company to participate in activities. It's November of each year. It was a special November this last November because on Veterans Day, which was, I believe, November 10th last year, they commemorated the National Native American Veterans Memorial in DC on the National Mall. So finding intersectional ways of talking about Native American people when you're talking about veterans or when you're talking about LGBTQ plus people, et cetera, is another good tip.
That's terrific, Heath. Thank you. And veterans provides a good segue because actually, when I first got to know you, you were leading efforts for the Deloitte University core program for transitioning
Yeah.
military veterans who were going from military life back into civilian careers. And that's an initiative that I've worked with for many years. Can you talk a little bit about veterans issues? I mean, when it comes to diversity, I think oftentimes people think about sort of permanent demographic things like racial identity or gender identity, but veterans are increasingly thought of as a form of diversity within the workplace, and there's a lot of important veterans initiatives. What are your thoughts about that, and how companies can be more thoughtful and inclusive around that?
Yeah, well, you're right to point out that the challenges that veterans face in the corporate workplace compared to the challenges that maybe racial ethnic minorities face or women face in the workplace or other groups, it's all different. But no person is just a veteran. A person is a combination of identities. If we think about ethnic racial diversity, the military community is one of the most diverse communities in the world. So when you're thinking about supporting military veterans and investing in those efforts as a corporate sponsor or as a corporate initiative, it's really about prioritizing overall diversity. Now, there are some industry transition challenges that veterans face, and that's some of the work that you and I have done, Dory, on helping them translate skills that they learned in the military into a corporate context. And that's critically important. But the nuance there, I think, and a safe bet is just to assume that everyone is a combination of things and not just one identity.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Heath. This is Dory Clark with Newsweek's weekly interview show Better, and we're here with Heath Clayton. Heath leads diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Chase brand of JP Morgan Chase. And Heath, one of the special features that we do on this show is that we actually have someone each week who is identified as the Better Leader of the Week. And the person who is being interviewed gets to nominate their choice of person. And you have nominated a gentleman named Ryan Chow. And Ryan, as I understand it, is here we go. What do we know about Ryan? He works in the Chinatown branch of one of your banks, and you were mentioning that he does some really remarkable work. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more
Sure.
about Ryan and why you chose him as the Better Leader of the Week.
Yes. Well, across the country, JP Morgan Chase has hired community managers to serve the financial needs of the local communities. Ryan is the community manager representing Chinatown in New York City's Manhattan, where we actually have 4 or 5 branches. He's focused on providing financial education seminars, home buying tips, educational workshops, and helping entrepreneurs in that community grow or start their own businesses. It's all part of a larger $30 billion commitment that JP Morgan Chase has made to advance racial equity. And Ryan has gotten super creative in the implementation of this. For Lunar New Year, which we have just finished celebrating here in across JP Morgan Chase and the world, he created red envelopes for when you went to an ATM, you got cash out of an ATM machine. You have now red envelopes for Lunar New Year, which of course is really symbolic. People give out money to children and to unmarried people in your lives during Lunar New Year. I actually just got married in August, and I didn't know that I was going to be on the hook for giving out red envelopes of cash to a lot of my friends during Lunar New Year. Ryan also coordinated our efforts to participate with a float in the 25th annual Lunar New Year parade through Chinatown in New York. It was my first time on a parade float. It was a little cold, but it was so much fun waving to a lot of our customers in the community and meeting them and learning about their needs and the amazing work that they do. So I'm enormously proud of the work that Ryan does and that JP Morgan Chase does to help communities across the country. And that is why I nominated him.
That's so great, Heath. Thank you very much for that. So you are a pretty civic-minded guy. You are also the board chair of an organization called Out for Undergrad, and you do a lot of work in the LGBT community. Can you talk a little bit about Out for Undergrad and what they do, and also a little bit, perhaps for those who are not familiar with it, about some of the LGBT initiatives that JP Morgan Chase does as well?
Absolutely. Well, Out for Undergrad helps high-achieving LGBTQ2+ undergraduates achieve their full potential. We create conferences throughout the year focused by industry to help around 1,000 students a year find jobs and, more importantly, receive career mentorship and encouragement around being authentic from other LGBTQ2+ professionals in those industries. We've been around a really long time, since 2004. And there's a great collaboration with JP Morgan Chase and Out for Undergrad. The bank has sponsored O for You, as we call it, every year since 2004, and countless of O for You alums have worked and still work at the bank. I think it's a great example of a collaboration, Dory, between an NGO and a corporation that creates shared value, right? Companies want to demonstrate their values through their hiring process. NGOs are able to build community around the specific needs that diverse communities have and highlight and help them overcome barriers to achieving success in those industries. The result of this work and this collaboration over the years has really moved the needle on LGBTQ2+ representation in the corporate workforce, and other collaborations to help veterans or to help other communities are a good model to follow as well. Here at JP Morgan Chase, we're really proud that we founded the Office of LGBTQ+ Affairs. We're one of the only, if not the only, large corporation that has a dedicated office focused on the LGBTQ plus agenda. This is for our own employees, but it's also for our customers, providing support to make our products and services more inclusive, helping LGBTQ plus nonprofits and communities around the country. This shows up in a variety of ways. We provide business coaching and support. We also leverage our people to volunteer for board service as well. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing to advance LGBTQ plus inclusion at JP Morgan and of the ongoing partnership with Out for Undergrad. I have a great job and a great side job.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Thank you. We're here with Heath Clayton. He is with the Chase brand of JP Morgan Chase. He leads DEI efforts, diversity, equity, and inclusion for them. And I am Dory Clark. This is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better, where we talk to diverse leaders about some of the great initiatives that they are undertaking about advancing diversity and inclusion everywhere in the corporate world. Now, Heath, I know from reading the statistics that being a DEI leader in particular, I mean, being a corporate leader in general is tough, but the statistics for diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders in terms of job churn and things like that are really, really tough. And it seems like this is an area where sometimes DEI leaders just find themselves in the firing line. It's extremely high pressure. So what are your thoughts about that, the reasons behind it, and how do you actually stay positive and have forward momentum in the work that you're doing, which I think a lot of people acknowledge is not necessarily easy work?
Yes, it's not. It can be heavy. And I find inspiration by pointing myself back towards some wins that you get along the way. I'm really proud of the work here at JP Morgan Chase and working at this company. We can now walk into any Chase branch across the whole network, over 4,000 of them, and be connected to sign language interpretation. If you're a member of the deaf community, that's a huge win, knowing that there's that consistency. We're also doing great work to hire thousands of people who have previous arrest or conviction records and providing them employment opportunities and career advancement here at the bank. Those types of things are exciting. They keep me coming to work every day. You can point to how you're making people's lives better. Some of the harder work, more challenging work around the long-term racial inequity that we see in financial services and across the world is a lot more challenging and nuanced. It's harder to overcome. It's going to take a longer time. I keep going also with the encouragement of having a support group of others that are in this space. We say we're all practicing, we're all D&I practitioners. No one's an expert yet. And it's really critical to learn from others that are on this journey and to have them be there to encourage you when you hit tough spots. So I'm really grateful that I have that support group, and it keeps me going.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. I just want to pick up on something that you said, which I think is interesting. You were mentioning about some of the efforts that JP Morgan Chase is using to reach out and provide employment opportunities and pathways for people who have been in jail. And I'm curious. I mean, that's not necessarily how people would commonly think of diversity issues. Although certainly it makes sense when you say it that, this is an underrepresented group for sure. These are people who have some challenges in terms of being able to get into the employment pipeline. How do you think about what diversity is? Clearly in your view or in JP Morgan Chase's view, it's more expansive than just, sort of demographics, like raw demographics. How do we think about what the purview of diversity is or what it looks like?
It's can mean something different to every person you ask. And so I'm going to back up for a minute, not necessarily talk about the JP Morgan definition, but just how I think about it. Diversity is what I mentioned earlier around having intersectional identities. People, in order to feel included and to feel like they belong, which is our desired end state, don't want to be thought of as a diverse person. They don't want to be thought of as just one piece of their identity. They want us to show up, meet them where they are, hear their story, empathize with them, and provide support so they feel like they're being treated fairly. And by meeting some of society's most underserved communities, by meeting those that need the most help at the combination of their identities, that's really how you move the needle and help these people. So we're doing that work for Indigenous communities. We're doing that work for our LGBTQ plus colleagues that are needing support. And we're doing that for those that have previous arrest or conviction records, and providing support for them as the combination of their identities and where they are to help them. And I think that that's how I have to stay grounded in this work and keep going as a diversity professional. Otherwise, you start to just segment your efforts or divide when you really should be unifying.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I'd be curious actually to hear a little bit from you about your own journey to this work. What for you made it click that you wanted to actually work in DEI issues? I mean, obviously you have various, facets of diversity yourself, but was there a moment or moments where you said, "Oh, okay, this is not just, sort of things about me. This is work I want to be doing."
Yeah, well, it's been a slow roll. I'd say I did not want to be a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner when I started my career, or even midway through my career, but I gravitated towards that because I felt like it's where I could have the most impact. And in parallel to my career journey has also been my life personal journey. I was born in a rural area. My mother is Chickasaw, which makes me Chickasaw, Native American. My grandmother gave me a name when I was born, and we were very culturally connected to my tribe. As I entered the workforce, I was unsure if I should tell people I was Native American because I also present as white. And talking about that at the same time, being ethnically Chickasaw and also presenting as white, was something I was not comfortable doing. So I just didn't talk about it. That changed after graduate school. I found myself having educational opportunities that provided a lot of scholarships and grants just because I was Native American. And I maybe felt a little bit guilty after going to grad school for free. But I went back to that grad school and I asked, how can I help? Who can I mentor? Where are other Native American students I can help? And they said, well, Heath, in the last 10 years, you're still the only Native American student to take us up on that free ride offer. And
Wow.
at that moment, Dory, I stopped feeling guilty about being white and being Chickasaw. And I said, you know what? I've got to tell anyone who will listen that I am Native American, that my name is Hinoshi Himata Pasachi. And I've got to set an example for people in my tribe and other tribes that, yes, you can go to a big school. Yes, you can have a corporate career. So that journey to come into terms with my own ethnicity and white privilege, as one way of saying it, coincided with some bad experiences I had with professional diversity, equity, and inclusion in my personal journey. I remember many years ago, I was selected for an advancement program for diverse professionals, and I was so excited. And I walked into that classroom on the first day, Dory, and it was me and around 30 Black women in that classroom. And I felt so self-conscious. And so I immediately just had to introduce myself and say, hey, everyone, I'm not sure if I'm here because I'm gay or because I selected a Native American box somewhere, but this is who I am. And I'm really excited to meet you all. And we all leaned into it and we all had a great time. But those sorts of experiences where people were being put into boxes or having some sort of arbitrary categorization really made me understand that we need to do better and that diversity, equity, inclusion should evolve. And so taking that personal journey and then my professional journey, I landed in this role.
I'm so glad you shared that, Heath. I think that's really wonderful. So we're nearing the end of our conversation. We are close to wrapping up, but I just want to ask you a couple more quick questions.
Sure.
And of course, quick is relative because we could talk about these things for hours. But one of the things that I'm curious about is, what you're personally proudest of. You've mentioned a lot of different initiatives that you've been working on, that JP Morgan Chase has been working on, but is there something that you feel like either that you're doing now or that you have completed recently that you feel like is a little bit of a North Star, that you feel like, yeah, this is what would be really good in the DEI world, and I'm proud to have done it?
I like to tell people that the best way to learn about DE&I is to spend time in diverse communities. And nonprofit board service, nonprofit volunteerism is such a great way of doing that. And if I think back on the career work that I'm proudest of, the diversity, equity, inclusion work that I'm proudest of, most of it's in the nonprofit space. I have the great privilege of being the chair of the board of Texas Native Health, which is a Native American health clinic in North Texas. It's also a workforce development center that helps people find jobs and delivers scholarships. Nonprofit governance, nonprofit management is hard. Working with communities is hard. Hearing all that feedback from your customers, from your constituents, hard. But if you stick to it and you devote the time, it can be the most rewarding. At JP Morgan Chase, I'm most proud of the work we're doing to try to reach every employee. 30,000 employees in Chase. It's a whole lot of people. And to actually reach them with a inclusion message, to actually reach them with content so they feel like they belong, and to change the systems. It's a big undertaking, but I'm really proud of the work we're doing to reach more and more people every week. And I'm excited to stay in the saddle and keep doing the good work.
That's fantastic. We're here with Heath Clayton. He is the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Chase brand of JP Morgan Chase. And I'm Dory Clark. This is our weekly interview show, Better, which focuses on DEI issues. You can learn more about me and the show at doryclark.com. And Heath, the last question that I have for you is really just the vision of the future. I think so often when we have a conversation about diversity, it feels kind of fraught. It feels sort of stuck in this present of like, oh, we're never going to get there. We're never going to make any progress. But obviously, you're doing this work because you're aspiring towards something. And I would love to hear your thoughts. What is the future vision? How will we know that this whole enterprise has succeeded? How will we know it when we see it? What does that look like for you in your mind's eye?
Oh, it's a really big question, Dory. A great mentor of mine has this phrase that I love: diversity is achievable, but inclusion has to be believable. We're going to keep working to achieve diverse representation and to achieve equitable outcomes, but it's only going to be finished when that feeling of inclusion is actually believable for everyone. It's kind of a squishy finish line, and we may not know when we've reached it. But at the end of my life, at the end of my career, if we're in a place where my Chickasaw grandmother feels like she could have belonged, where Heath, growing up in rural East Texas as a closeted gay boy, feels like he belongs, and where we've made meaningful progress on racial equity in this country and around the world, then if we can do all that, we'll be well on our way.
That sounds like a great vision. Heath Clayton, thank you so much for joining us today.
Dory, thanks. It's been fun.
Take care, everyone. We will see you next week.